Ahoy, mates, and welcome aboard. Oh, yes, I'm afloat. This may appear to be a pier, but in fact, it's a vessel. The underwater viewing vessel at Homosassa Springs Nature World. They call it the Fishbowl. Here's what it looks like down below. But let's begin the show with the assignment that first brought us here this summer. It was an experience that left us very much impressed with Nature World's importance. The Homosassa Springs Nature World. It is a public attraction. And what is it people pay to see? It's almost a sad irony. Here, people pay to see nature. But fortunately, we're still willing to. Otherwise, this too might all be gone. For today, if it's not profitable, it seems even nature cannot be preserved. The people who own and operate the Nature Center recognize this and are passionate about its preservation.
It's all nature here, and people, you don't find many places like this anymore. I want it to stay just like it is, and I think the people in this county want it to stay like this, and just hope and pray that it does.
It's this philosophy that caused Nature World to contribute its resources to the preservation of one of nature's most endangered species, and hundreds are on hand for it. For the first time in history, Florida manatee born in captivity are being released to the wild. The truck is from the Miami Seaquarium. For Sunrise in Savannah, it's the end of a long drive. But for Dr. Jesse White, this is the fruition of a 15-year dream, to replenish the manatee population by breeding them in captivity. But the plan had a discrepancy. Animals born and raised in captivity cannot be released directly into the wild. They must be able to slowly acclimate if they are to survive. And so Nature World at Homossassa prepared a halfway house. Nature World fenced off a large portion of its spring to provide the young manatees a natural environment, but with no natural dangers, and where their progress can be carefully monitored. For the Seaquarium's staff veterinarian, the manatee's release was the realization of his greatest ambition.
Well, you're apprehensive, but it's what we were planning for, so you have to take that into account. This is what the program's all about. So they have to be acclimated back to the wild eventually, so there's no opportune time. The younger the better. They're weaned. I have no apprehensions. They'll be fine.
Wow, what a wonderful experience. One cannot swim with a manatee without getting this tremendous sense of peace and tranquility. They're the most gentle animals I've ever been around.
That's really true. And you know, moving an animal as big as a manatee presents some equally big problems. You can't just pick one up and carry it to a new home. And to aid in this precarious predicament, the folks at Homosassa Springs and the Miami Seaquarium enlisted the aid of some other folks from New York's center of seafaring, City Island.
While most of the attention in Homosassa was focused on the liberation of the young manatees, for a small, involved, and very dedicated group, the how of that release was just as important as the why.
This is the biggest project that we've ever worked on. This gear was originally designed for rescue whales that are accidentally beached or entrapped in lines, fishing cables, that sort of thing. So today was sort of a departure from what we usually do, because these animals were not accidentally beached. We were just transporting them. But these are the first live animals that have been moved by the gear.
Alexandra Craig is a member of an elite team. Based on City Island in New York, the North Wind Undersea Institute, headed by Michael Sandlofer, is pioneering the field of sea mammal rescue.
In 1981, a sperm whale was stranded off of Fire Island in New York, and we were called in to aid the medical team in administering food to the animal and moving them around. North Windling Undersea Institute, through a team effort, got together with commercial divers and scientists and veterinarians and developed this gear.
All over the country and all over the world, marine mammals beach and die tragically. It's a very painful, long, agonizing death that they face, and a lot of times they beach en masse. And up till now, there's been no way to move them, except for bulldozers and ropes around their tails, which kills the animal. It drags them underwater as they're dragged off the beach, and it also puts them into a shock that they can't recover from. We have developed gear in addition to the sea sled that gently moves them non-traumatically without damaging their skin onto the sea sled apparatus, which we roll out into the water and with which we can release them safely.
We know once other doctors and environmental groups and the government of the United States, they have a marine stranding network throughout all of our coasts. Once they're aware that we have alternatives, that it's the day of the line around the tail is over.
The New York sperm whale rescued by Northwind Undersea Institute survived through sheer determination, his and Michael Sandlofer's. It's feats like this that prove to the world that with a little help, man and the mammals of the sea can coexist in peace.
Northwind Institute has done a lot of work with whales in Baja California and in Europe. And here in Florida, as closely involved as we are with the sea, it's nice to know that the people with skills and knowledge in dealing with stranded marine mammals are available.
And it's also nice to know that Nature World will remain available and in its natural state for all of us. You see, all of this had been up for sale. You can be sure the developers would love to ring this spring with condominiums. But on September 4th, the citizens of Citrus County said, no way, we want Nature World to stay this way. Isn't that right, John Barnes?
That's right, Bob. The headwaters mean everything to this river. Without them, it would be a total saltwater river. No bass, shellcrackers, the many freshwater fish that do inhabit this river. And it's not only the Homossassa River, the Halls River, and the other connecting rivers are also affected by this. You've got a neighborhood of 6 million gallons a day being pumped out of these springs going down into that river. It helps cleanse the river as well as helps all the inhabitants of the river to stay as it is. And I did work very hard to preserve this, along with a lot of other good people that believe that this should be preserved for not only the current people of Citrus County, but for the people of the state of Florida, the other tourists and vacationers that come to Florida, as well as our grandkids and their children.
So it will remain a public attraction much as it is now.
This is what we anticipate. We haven't gotten into the point on if any changes will be made, but as far as I can tell right now, there'll be very few changes made. It'll remain a natural attraction. We hope that a lot of research centers through the universities in the state of Florida can be attracted into here, and this will help offset the fact that we did lose a few dollars in tax money, but at the same point we gained something I believe much more important.
Sometimes in the course of covering 8 country, we have occasion to do some, well, kind of crazy things. For instance, recently my partner Rich Jaffe went for a swim, one which put us in unprecedented proximity to one of Florida's most ferocious inhabitants.
J.P. Garner isn't always working at Homosassa Springs. Today, for example, he and his wife Sandra are on vacation. They could be on their way to visit some relatives. Or maybe they're off looking for antiques. Well, they are off on an adventure, and they are looking for this. The Florida alligator has a closing jaw pressure of 1,500 pounds per square inch. He is known to eat anything he can catch, regardless of size. The female of the species tends to run a little bit smaller. They never get over 9 feet in length. A few years ago, someone decided that these modern-day dinosaurs might be going the way of their ancestors, towards extinction. So they were put on the National Endangered Species list. Well, they've come back. A recent count puts their number at around 1 million. They're now on the protected list. And occasionally, state-designated trappers, like J.P. Garner, are called in to eliminate a troublesome gator. We Floridians love our waterways, but it seems we don't like to share them very much.
Yeah, she swims in her cove over there, and she swims out and back every afternoon. And this one day she saw the alligator, and it followed her trail right where she swam, like followed right back to shore.
Maxine Hume and her husband Jim are building the dream house on a backwater of the Withlacoochee River. But there's trouble in paradise.
Yeah, I've seen as high as 3 or 4 at a time cruising across here. The other day, it got our pet egret. We heard this noise, and we think that big one got it.
You may well wonder, just what does one do if a 400-pound, horrendously hungry reptile has been terrorizing your wee ones or pouncing on your pooch? You call the State Fish and Game Commission. They investigate your problem, and if necessary, they will send a designated trapper like JP to give you a hand. There are a lot of ways to remove an unwanted alligator. In this instance, JP did something rather like shark fishing, and the gator took a bait. There's only one problem.
He's tangled around a great big log down there, a big stump. So this is a deep lake, and it's an old pit, and there are many trees down there. And as soon as he took this bait, he just went immediately around all those trees, and he's really down there.
JP had to reach into his bag of tricks for another approach at getting this gator. In this case, he borrowed my mask, fins, and snorkel, and decided to go for a swim with a trapped alligator.
About is my visibility, not being able for me to see, and if he's tangled, and when a gator bites something, they hang on a lot of those jaws, so I don't want to get bit, and I'll just have to play it by ear and hope I can see him. It's the only shot we got.
JP's wife, Sandra, is designated by the state as his official helper. But isn't this taking togetherness a little too far?
We lived in the same apartment complex about 22 years ago. We'll be married 21 years this November. It's been an adventure. And I'm sure it'll continue to be an adventure. We're a team.
What's going through your head right now?
I'm praying. In my spirit for protection, and I hope that gator's dead right now. It'd be a lot easier to get him out. And if he did fight, like I anticipate he did, he's probably dead, but you never can tell because alligators fake you off. They come alive real quick. He knows what he's doing. He wouldn't be doing this if he wasn't professional and know what he was doing. He's taking all the precautions that are necessary.
JP floated and swam over that tree stump for what seemed like hours. You could almost smell the tension. The only sound from shore was the insistent whir of the insects. Finally, JP pronounced judgment. The gator was dead. He had drowned himself in the course of the struggle, but there was no way JP could have known that until he was in the water. All that was left was to haul that gator in.
Is there any signs of life?
No. He's got his gator. Oh my goodness. Bigger than you are. You all right?
Yeah.
JP's swimming partner was 10 feet, 7 inches long and weighed between 300 and 400 pounds. In JP's own words, have gator, will travel.
And have Aquacam, we'll cover it. That underwater footage gives you an idea of the kind of danger that JP exposes himself to. But what about the fellow who was exposing that footage? The only thing between Rich and those jaws was this.
Yeah, this housing can be a little unwieldy, but I'll tell you, for this shot, it was pretty reassuring to have this much metal between me and that monster.
Of course, most of our underwater photographic assignments aren't that foreboding. Most are fun. Diving is a phenomenal experience, and one which more and more of us are documenting on film. For the Manatee release, while Rich and I used the Aquacam, fellow divers Ed Euditis and Skip Gandy were at work with their still cameras, capturing the action for friends and families, as well as our 8-country archives.
There are a lot of divers nowadays everywhere, but generally the population doesn't see the underwater world, and it's very impressive, and it certainly fits in our whole existence on this planet, and it gives you a great appreciation of the ecology and what we are doing.
Perhaps one of the best-known underwater photographers in the Bay Area is Bob Gladden. His subaquatic snapshots can be found in such prestigious pages as those between the covers of Jacques Cousteau's books.
You go underwater, it is so different from what's above water that it sort of shocks your mind into the reality of beauty so that you can become aware of that reality of beauty. And because the underwater is so different than from what's above water, you kind of, it sort of wakes you up. You know, it's like when you go on a vacation, you go to the mountains, you know, all of a sudden you're in such a different environment that you sort of wake up to all this beauty. Whereas if you lived in the mountains, after a while you'd get where you don't see it. And so by going underwater, it's so different that you just got to wake up, you know? And when you wake up, you see it all.
Hello, Mr. Squirrel. Want to say something? That's not a peanut, that's a microphone. Coming up, a look at a very special Homosassa homecoming. There you go, that's the real thing.
This week, the Homosassa area really had something to celebrate. 8-year-old Tony Bailey came home. 5 months after a liver transplant in Pittsburgh and extensive treatment, the doctors are giving her a cautious but nonetheless clean bill of health. At Tampa International Airport, friends and neighbors gathered to wish Tony and her family a very warm welcome home.
What are you going to do when you get home?
Write Debbie a letter.
And then?
Play and play and play and play and play.
And play, huh?
Come on. You know, Homosassa Springs Nature World would be a perfect place to bring the kids. But a kid needs a grown-up to bring him here. Those children who don't have grown-ups, if they're lucky, they have big brothers, like Bill Ratliff.
This is the first time Michael has ever had a police mugshot taken of him. No doubt it will be his last. On this day, Michael is getting a special tour of the Venice Police Department. That includes getting his fingerprints taken.
What do you think of that? Is that pretty neat?
Yeah.
Really? Let me see your hands. Show the camera your hands.
Michael thought the whole experience was pretty neat, to use his words, but pretty scary as well. Not only was he shown the workings of the police department's communications room, but he also got a real good idea of what it would be like to be behind bars.
So when you hear this sound, you never want to hear it. When you hear that, and you hear the law, that means you're here to stay.
And you can bet those words did not fall on empty ears. Michael has had a few minor brushes with the police already.
After that, I've been just cooled down. I haven't been in trouble with the law since.
It's startling to hear an 11-year-old talk about his trouble with the law. Trouble, his caseworker says, started after Michael's father left home a year ago.
You ever get mad at him for just leaving?
Yeah. See, my mom and dad were having a fight, and we went to, just for about a week, to my aunt's, you know, to stay until stuff cooled down. And when we come back, he was gone. And we've never seen him since.
Michael is a straight talker, but he needs an older male friend to aim him on a straight path. He's not a problem child, he just needs some male attention. If you would like to be his big brother, give the South Sarasota County Big Brothers Big Sisters a call at 488-4009. That number again, 488-4009.
Don't go away. 8 Country will be right back.
You know, it's been a long time since I've been any place where the animals were so tame they'd sit on your lap.
Well, that's Homosassa Springs Nature World for you. Let's hope it stays this way. Here you go, fella.
You're feeding my squirrel, are you? Okay.
Until next week, Bob Hite and Rich Jaffe wishing you smooth sailing.